When you look at a globe, the world seems so neatly organized.
Right, like everything has its place.
Exactly.
Hmm.
You have these crisp, color-coded lines separating nations, defining where one culture supposedly ends, and a completely different set of rules begins. It looks permanent.
Oh, it looks completely impenetrable.
Yeah, but then you start looking at the realities on the ground, and you realize those lines on the map, they are completely porous to the things that actually matter.
I mean, ideas, movements, and certainly faith, they just slip right through them.
They really do. And that is exactly what we are unpacking today on the Missions Connect Deep Dive.
Yes, and this deep dive is a tool to prepare your mind and your heart for the content you are going to encounter this upcoming week on the Missions Connect app.
Which is a Bible-based and missions-focused devotional and prayer app that is a ministry of assisting to obey.com.
We are here to bring our driving mission to life, blessing the nations through prayer, knowledge, and obedience.
Because, honestly, we simply cannot meaningfully pray for or obey God's calling regarding situations we just don't understand.
Right, we need that context, and we have a really profound week ahead of us. We are setting the stage for week 12, which runs from March 16th through the 22nd, 2026.
Wow, so this marks the culmination of a massive 4-week intercessory focus on the Muslim world.
It does. It's a big milestone.
So today, we are examining the source materials to understand 3 incredibly distinct, unreached groups. We are going to look at a river-dwelling fishing community in Mali.
Yeah, and then a deeply surveilled, secularized group in Turkmenistan.
And finally, a rapidly multiplying underground church right in the spiritual epicenter of Saudi Arabia. Okay, let's unpack this. We're starting in West Africa.
Right, specifically in Mali's Mopti region.
Yeah, along the banks of the Niger River with the Tej Bozo people.
Mm.
The sources describe them essentially as the water people.
Water people, yeah. There are about 358,000 of them.
Which is a huge group. And they are fishermen, rice farmers, and river traders living in these compact villages and like seasonal straw hut camps.
And statistically, the sources note they are 99.8% Muslim, entirely unreached, and their society is highly communal.
What's fascinating here is the sheer complexity of their spiritual landscape, though.
Oh, absolutely. It is never as simple as a single label. I mean, yes, they are overwhelmingly Muslim on paper and in public practice. They observe the prayers, they do the fasts.
Right.
But beneath that Islamic framework runs a very deep, very potent current of animism. It is a syncretic reality.
So it's blended together.
Exactly. If you are a bozo fisherman, you might pray toward Mecca in the morning, but when you take your boat out onto the Niger River, you are also deeply concerned with appeasing the spirits of the water.
Oh, wow. So you are tied to the traditions of your ancestors and the spiritual forces that your community believes actually control the fish and the harvest.
Yeah, and that creates an incredibly complex barrier. You aren't just engaging with Islamic theology.
No, you're engaging with a worldview where the physical river and the spiritual world are practically indistinguishable.
Right, so how do you even begin a conversation about the gospel when the spiritual currency is so tied to their daily survival on the water?
It requires an immense amount of cultural fluency, which brings us to a massive historical hurdle, the sources point out.
Yeah, the colonial legacy.
Exactly. The colonial legacy of French Christianity has left a lasting, deeply ingrained distrust among the bozo.
Because for generations, Christianity was viewed not as good news, but as the religion of the colonizers.
Right. It was associated with foreign control, with losing your African identity.
Yeah.
So if a Westerner approaches a bozo elder with the gospel, that elder isn't just hearing a new theological idea.
No, he is hearing an echo of European imperialism.
That historical baggage explains so much. In the West, we often treat sharing faith like fishing with a single line. It's highly individualistic.
Right. You make a personal decision. Maybe you alienate yourself from your family, but it's your choice. You deal with the consequences.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But reaching a communal, patriarchal society like the bozo, a single line just won't work. It will snap under the social pressure.
Oh, for sure. If one young man decides to follow Jesus, he isn't just adopting a new belief. He is actively betraying his ancestors, his community, and arguably his livelihood on the river.
He gets completely exiled. So to reach a society like this, you need a net.
The net analogy is perfect here. The mechanics of cultural change in a society like the bozo dictate that the community has to move together.
Right. It requires whole families, whole villages coming to faith simultaneously.
Yeah, the elders and patriarchs have to make a decision that shifts the entire community's trajectory. When the net brings them all in together, the social fabric remains intact.
It just becomes transformed. But pulling that net requires workers who intimately understand those waters.
Which is why the sources are so explicit about the logistical need on the ground. Western missionaries face an incredibly steep uphill battle because of that colonial distress we talked about.
So the urgent need is for indigenous African missionaries from neighboring people groups, workers who understand the cultural nuances of West Africa.
People who know the rhythm of the river and who do not carry the baggage of European colonialism.
Yeah. Currently, Joshua Project indicates that 7 pioneer workers are needed just to begin this work.
And they are starting from the ground up. I mean, there is no New Testament in their Tyaxo language yet.
None at all.
No, the sources know only some Bible portions exist, so the foundation, the literal translation of the words of Christ into the language they dream in, is still being laid.
Wow. For Mali, our minds and prayers are anchored in Psalm 2, verse 8. Ask me, and I will make the nations your inheritance, the ends of the earth your possession.
It is such a great reminder that the Bozo people on the Niger River are part of that promised inheritance.
Yeah, and it really sets the stage for the specific intercession this week. But from that highly communal, deeply traditional environment in Mali, the source material moves us to an entirely different type of barrier.
Right. We've been talking about cultural barriers in Mali where the community keeps you out, but in Turkmenistan, it is the exact opposite. The government traps you in.
Yeah, we are moving from the geographic isolation of the Niger River to the extreme political and technological isolation of Central Asia. We're looking at the roughly 67,000 ethnic Turks living in Turkmenistan.
And the sources do not mince words here. They describe Turkmenistan as the North Korea of Central Asia.
That is a heavy label.
It is. The state apparatus heavily surveils its citizens, restricts internet access to a trickle, and absolutely bans unauthorized religious activity.
Yeah, the 2025 Open Doors World Watch List ranks Turkmenistan at number 29 for Christian persecution globally.
And the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom has designated it a country of particular concern due to systematic, egregious violations of religious freedom.
But the demographic data in the sources presents a really striking paradox. The population is 97% Muslim, yet they have been deeply secularized by decades of Soviet atheism.
Yeah, that paradox is the defining characteristic of their spiritual landscape. You have a cultural identity completely tied to Islam, but an intellectual and societal framework that was forcibly stripped of the divine during the Soviet era.
Because the state tried to mandate atheism for generations.
Exactly. And in doing so, they didn't create a devoutly Islamic society in the traditional sense. They created a profound spiritual vacuum. The architectural and cultural echoes of Islam remain, but there is an underlying emptiness.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. If we look at the logistics, you have an oppressive government monitoring everything. You have this spiritual vacuum, and you have state-sponsored paranoia about unauthorized religion.
Yeah.
Wait, if the government uses the family unit and the local community as an extension of the surveillance state, how do you even trust your own brother or spouse with the Turkish Bible?
That is the big question.
It sounds practically impossible for a house church to survive, let alone grow.
The survival mechanisms are incredibly intense, and they come at a severe cost. For Muslim background converts, discovery often means immediate disinheritance, beatings, and total social exile.
Because the government relies on neighbors, informing on neighbors.
Exactly. Because of this, the underground church operates with military-grade operational security. They don't have large gatherings. They use compartmentalized cell structures.
So, like, a believer might only know 2 or 3 other Christians.
Yes. If one person is detained and interrogated, they physically cannot betray the entire network because they just don't know who the rest of the network is.
Man, that level of constant vigilance must take a massive psychological toll. You are basically worshiping in whispers.
You are. But the sources do mention that they aren't entirely isolated. Organizations like Mission Eurasia are quietly equipping believers on the ground.
Yeah, and this involves tremendous logistical creativity. Because unlike the Bozo in Mali, a complete Bible actually exists in the Turkish language. The issue is distribution.
Right. How do you get a banned book into a surveillance state?
It happens through couriers, through encrypted digital SD cards hidden in shoes or everyday items.
Or even by tearing physical Bibles into individual books so they're easier to conceal and pass along.
Wow. It is a slow, dangerous, and highly deliberate process of getting the text into a believer's hands without triggering a raid.
And the scripture for this section suddenly carries so much physical weight. It is Isaiah 9, verse 2.
Right.
The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has shone.
When the government actively enforces the darkness by law, passing a single digital file of the gospel becomes an act of monumental courage.
It really does. History consistently shows us that enforced darkness usually just serves to make the light stand out more clearly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that dynamic of government restriction pushing faith underground perfectly sets up our final region.
Yes, building on this theme of restricted nations, we are guiding you from a secularized post-Soviet regime in Central Asia straight into the absolute spiritual heartland of Islam itself.
We are looking at Saudi Arabia.
The literal epicenter. This is the birthplace of Islam, where the legal and cultural apparatus is entirely designed to maintain a 100% Islamic society.
Right. On paper, this is the most impossible scenario in our entire deep dive. No churches are permitted to exist. Evangelizing is strictly illegal.
And conversion from Islam can be punishable by death.
Exactly. The religious police have historically had immense power to enforce public morality. It is a fortress.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, though, we encounter one of the most staggering statistics in all of our source material this week.
Oh, this blew my mind.
Despite every single one of those laws, despite the very real threat of execution, the underground church in Saudi Arabia is growing.
And according to Forgotten Missionaries International and the Joshua Project, it is growing at a rate approximately 65% above the global average.
Wait, 65%? Inside a nation where it is illegal to be a convert.
I know.
It's not like a delicate flower pushing through concrete. It's more like a highly sophisticated smuggler's tunnel, completely bypassing a heavily fortified wall.
That is exactly what it is like. The government builds the concrete barrier of the law, but the faith is moving underneath and around it.
But if missionaries cannot legally enter the country, and if speaking about Jesus on a street corner gets you arrested, what are the actual mechanics of this 65% growth?
Yeah.
How is it functioning day to day?
Well, the growth is happening through avenues that a state security apparatus simply cannot patrol. The sources outline several primary methods, and the first is perhaps the most difficult for a secular mindset to grasp.
Okay.
Jesus is appearing to Saudis in dreams and visions.
Oh.
We see this documented repeatedly across the Muslim world, individuals experiencing profound disruptive dreams of Christ before they ever meet a Christian or read a Bible. It bypasses the physical borders entirely.
You cannot put a firewall or a border patrol on someone's subconscious.
Precisely. And the second mechanism is the digital underground. We talk about no physical churches existing, but digital house churches are thriving.
Right, satellite television beaming into private living rooms, secure messaging apps, VPNs that bypass state internet controls.
Yeah. Searching Saudis are finding answers, downloading scriptures, and even participating in discipleship networks entirely online, hidden behind encryption.
Okay, so that handles the digital and the supernatural, but what about the physical human element? Is there a ground game?
There is, and it involves a demographic you might not expect. The sources highlight the massive role of millions of Christian foreign workers in Saudi Arabia.
Like people from the Philippines, parts of Africa, and other Asian nations.
Exactly. They are there purely for employment, working as domestic helpers, in construction or engineering. To the religious police, they are largely invisible labor.
But they act as modern-day tent makers.
Yes. Through their quiet daily integrity, their secret prayers over the households they serve, and their covert witness, they are planting seeds right inside the fortress.
That is an incredible subversive strategy. A Filipino nanny becoming a frontline missionary simply by faithfully caring for a Saudi family and praying over their children.
Right. And this is all happening while the country itself is experiencing a slight shift. The sources mention the cautious new access points being created by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's modernization program.
Yeah, as the nation opens up slightly for economic diversification and tourism, the absolute hermetic seal on the culture loosens.
New ideas, new interactions, and new technologies inevitably slip in.
And the timing of this deep dive is incredibly significant. This week, around March 18th and 19th, marks the conclusion of Ramadan and the beginning of Eid al-Fitr.
Right. For an entire month, millions of people have been fasting, intensely seeking God, and trying to earn righteousness.
As the fasting ends and the feasting begins, there's often a quiet space afterward, a spiritual exhaustion, but also an attentiveness. People are searching for assurance that their month of discipline actually mattered.
It is arguably the moment of greatest spiritual vulnerability and searching in the Islamic calendar, which is why the scripture anchor for Saudi Arabia is so fitting.
2 Chronicles 16 verse 9. For the eyes of the Lord range throughout the earth to strengthen those whose hearts are fully committed to him.
Yeah, the state surveillance cameras might be watching the streets of Riyadh and Jeddah, but the eyes of the Lord are bypassing the cameras entirely, looking directly at the hearts of those searching behind closed doors.
We've covered a tremendous amount of geopolitical and spiritual ground today, from the communal fishing camps of the Niger River to the cell structures of Turkmenistan to the digital underground of Saudi Arabia.
It's a lot to take in.
So what does this all mean? We've analyzed the survival mechanisms and the cultural barriers, but how do you, listening to this right now, actually participate?
Because Missions Connect is not just an information feed. It is a mobilization tool.
Exactly. The challenge for this week is highly practical. The app is asking users to commit to 15 minutes of prayer a day. That breaks down to just 5 minutes per focus group.
Or if you want to be led through it, you can join the pre-recorded daily prayer on the app. It is about taking this geopolitical knowledge and utilizing it for targeted intercession.
And if you want to make these realities truly visceral, if you want to see what that operational security and resilience looks like in real time, the sources highly recommend 2 video resources.
Yes, there is a documentary called Sheep Among Wolves, Volume 2, produced by Frontier Alliance International.
And while it focuses on the Iranian underground church, the dynamics of state persecution, cellular networks, and the phenomenon of dreams and visions are directly applicable to what we discussed regarding Turkmenistan and Saudi Arabia.
For sure. The other resource mentioned is the Voice of the Martyrs series called IMN.
Watching these will put skin and bones on the concepts we've talked about. Seeing the faces of people who have lost everything but gained Christ will absolutely fuel those 15 minutes of daily prayer.
And that fuel is necessary as we push to the finish line of this 4-week focus, but it is also vital to look at what comes next.
Right. Week 13, which runs March 23rd through the 29th, is a designed shift in the rhythm. After a month of intense intercession, week 13 will be a week of rest and thanksgiving.
Which honestly feels a little counterintuitive when we've just spent all this time talking about the urgent need for pioneer workers and smuggled Bibles.
It does.
But this raises an important question. How often do we actually stop to thank God for the prayers we have just prayed?
That's so true. We are frequently so focused on the next global crisis or the next unreached group that we treat prayer like a one-way transaction.
Right, we throw our requests into the void and immediately move on to the next item on the list. Week 13 anchors on Psalm 46, verse 10. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth.
That verse isn't just a comforting thought. It's an operational strategy. It means that after a season of heavy intercession, the most profound act of faith is to stop, breathe, and trust that he is already working the mechanisms we can't see.
Exactly. And as we close out today's deep dive, I want to leave you with a powerful, lingering image from the daily devotionals in the source material. It comes from Revelation 5, verse 8. The writer John is looking into heaven, and he sees the elders before the throne. The scripture says they were holding golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of God's people.
Think about the weight of that image.
Think about what it means for you, the listener. Over these last 4 weeks, you have engaged deeply with these materials. You have interceded for the Tej Bozo fishermen wrestling with ancestral spirits.
For the isolated Turkmen believer memorizing scripture in a surveillance state.
And for the Saudis seeking truth on a secure messaging app. The temptation is to believe your prayers just echoed in your room and faded away.
But Revelation insists they have physical substance.
They are accumulating in golden bowls before the throne of God. But here is the thought I want you to carry with you. What happens when the bowl tips over?
Wow. That is the real question.
History tells us that when God finally pours out decades of accumulated prayer onto a closed nation, the societal shifts are seismic. Walls collapse. Regimes fracture. Revival breaks out in ways no intelligence agency could predict.
And the bowls are filling up right now with your 15 minutes a day.
Are we actually prepared for the answer when God tips those bowls over the Muslim world?
What a phenomenal thought to carry into this final week. The bowls are filling up. Well, that is all the time we have for today. This has been the Missions Connect Deep Dive.
It has been a privilege to analyze these sources with you.
To make sure you have all these resources, the daily devotionals, the videos, and the guided prayers at your fingertips, make sure to download the web-based app by clicking the link in the description or visiting assistingtoobey.com. Keep praying, keep learning, and we will see you next time.
So, you want a faith that actually matters, right? You want to make a difference in the world, to see the gospel changing lives, To know that your walk with God and His Word is impacting more than just your own life. Yeah, you want your life to count for the nations. But here's the thing. You're busy, maybe overwhelmed. You're pulled in 20 different directions. And even though you want to engage in missions and the Great Commission, you don't always know what to pray for, what's happening globally, or what your next step should be. The desire to obey is there, but the pathway isn't always clear. Let the Missions Connect app show you the way. Every day, you'll get a missions-focused devotional with a simple, practical action step and an option to share with the Missions Connect community. Every week, you get 3 strategic prayer focuses with fresh daily text and audio prayers, so you're never guessing about what to pray for. And when you're ready, you'll find opportunities to actually get involved in God's global work. Everything in the devotional and prayer section is free forever, but we offer you the opportunity to try the premium version for 15 days. You want to impact the nations with the gospel? With Missions Connect, now you can. Missions Connect, helping you bless the nations through prayer, knowledge, and obedience. A ministry of assisting2obey.com.